What up, world? This is the GoalNet recording live here from Chicago. Today's video is long overdue. It is a comparison of the Bauer Vapor 2X Pro and the Bauer Vapor Hyperlite. So one of the first and most obvious differences is the name change. The 3X Pro is actually the second price point goalie pad this year, which means it's actually essentially a step below the 2X Pro. And the Hyperlite is the direct replacement for the 2X Pro as the top price point, or the Pro goalie pad, as it's typically referred to, but it's Bauer's highest end goalie pad on the Vapor side. I think one of the other key takeaways we can have here is it may look like the Vapor 2X is a little bit shorter, maybe half an inch to an inch shorter than the Hyperlite. I think that's actually just because of the way the pads are broken in. If we look, kind of right there, we can see that there's a bit more of a break, and the 2X Pro has a bit more of an S curve versus I haven't worn in my Hyperlites as much, so they're standing a bit more upright. I actually lent my 2X Pro set when I was done testing them to a junior goalie who's on the ice multiple days a week to do a durability test. So we'll cover that probably on Instagram at a later date, but as you can see, the pads held up great. And he actually worked the pads in a bit different shape than I had, so that is why they look shorter. But they should be exactly the same size. Both pads are a size L, which is roughly the equivalent to a 35+1. And this side profile view sort of shows off what I was talking about, where you can see the more of the kind of the S curve, and this one's a bit more angled back on the Hyperlite. The other key takeaway here on the side of the goalie pad is that the Velcro has changed. If we look at the 2X, it is just sort of one square of Velcro, which gives you a bit more strapping options, versus on the Hyperlite, we can see we have the Aerolite foam there, but then the Velcro also goes up. So this really encourages kind of the angled strap with the knee block strap going down to the calf wrap. So if we compare and contrast these, the 2X Pro is going to have a little bit more adjustability in terms of just having more Velcro, like shear on this lower corner. That's not an option anymore. However, I think that, as I mentioned before in my reviews in the past, I can always get Bauer strapping dialed in, but I find that they sometimes almost have too many options for goalies because there's so much Velcro and so much adjustability with the elastic strap and the way the tune fit rotates. So as I look at Hyperlite, I think they tried to steer the goalie a little bit this year. So a little bit less adjustability with the Velcro, but probably in the spirit of trying to steer goalies, to how the engineers thought about the strapping being done when they're actually designing the equipment. And then the next thing we'll focus on here is the knee block. But if you look, this had the angled option, which is essentially the 45-degree bump out, versus the new Stabiliflex knee block is more of a traditional square, and we'll zoom in and really take a look at the differences there, because that is probably the most exciting difference between these two goalie pads. All right, so as we zoom in on the knee blocks here, the first thing you will notice is the Stabiliflex is a monolithic design with the knee block. So here we just have one big piece. There is not the traditional landing, the block, and then the inner wedge attached to the sliding surface, versus if we look over here on the 2X Pro, you can see you have multiple individual pieces. So here is our knee landing, here is our knee block, and then here is the sliding surface or the inner gusset, and then we have some Velcro connecting it all. So you can see this is a much larger, and if you can look, I kind of have this propped up against a chair. You can see this is a much longer, beefier knee stack than anything on the 2X, so that's a huge benefit. And then secondly, if we look right here, you can actually see a bit of a gap. I can actually slide my finger back in there. Sorry if it's a bit dark. But what I'm showing you here is that the knee stack actually is only attached to the goalie pad right in this crease by a set of laces, versus the Stabiliflex, if we imagined being able to see inside the pad, it's actually a joint that runs through there and across the goalie pad. It looks like a shelf bracket almost. It's an L. So this goalie pad knee block is actually fused right into the core of the pad. And if you zoom in, you can actually kind of see how the pad is built around the knee block, versus here is the traditional knee block, and you can see the laces and everything. So that is the biggest, that's probably the biggest new piece of technology on the Hyperlite pad compared to the 2X. And this is a very similar concept to what's on the Supreme Ultrasonic. The difference being that is Stabilis Slide, that is a rock hard, stiff knee block that doesn't move, versus if you check out my deep dive video, I show that knee stack flexes a little bit. And the purpose of this is you get the benefit of the, basically perfect automatic seal like on the Stabilis Slide, but it gives a little bit just to make the Hyperlite try and feel more like a traditional goal pad, even though it has all of the high-end tech and bells and whistles that you'd expect from a Bauer pad these days. The second most interesting piece of technology that's been upgraded in the Hyperlite versus the 2X Pro is the calf pillow that we can see here. So this is a piece that is Velcroed, so it can be adjusted inside the pad a little bit. You can play with it a little bit. It is sewn right down there, so you can't actually take it out. But you can see that you have the calf pillow versus if we look inside the 2X, and it's a bit harder to see because it's black. But this is just basically the inner gusset sliding, and then here's the inner calf wrap versus here. We have that inner gusset sliding surface, we have the calf wrap, and then we have that calf pillow. So the purpose of that pillow, along with the Stabilis Slide knee, is to basically better position your leg in the butterfly. It's going to improve the seal. And I mentioned this in the deep dive video, so check that out for specifics. But Bauer did a ton of research measuring how much weight a goalie puts on their leg in the butterfly, and actually specifically designed this calf pillow to ease the weight and better redistribute the goaltender's weight when they're in the butterfly, and then also try and tee your leg up in a better position for recovery. So this pillow is designed to basically relieve some stress of the weight off your body, and then also help your leg recover, and then lastly seal. So this may seem like a really subtle piece, but if you wear the 2X versus the Hyperlite, and we can see in there, there's nothing in there. This is where the pillow is. You'll really feel a difference in how well the pad seals. And then one other note too is the Hyperlite has the TuneFit 2.0. So we'll dive into that in just 1 second. All right, so this is the TuneFit 2.0. So TuneFit, the continuation is we have this strap that's on a plastic ring that can kind of slide up and down depending on how the goaltender wants to adjust it. What is different is down there, the strap actually goes through a leather loop and straps back onto itself. So if we look down in here, we did that, and then you see you have all the length of that Velcro for adjustability. I actually have played around with the Hyperlite strapping a lot. Anybody that follows me on Instagram knows that I actually wore the Ultrasonic with just the Professor strap and took the TuneFit right out. Being that Hyperlite is a little bit different pad, it flexes more. I wanted to wear this pad a little bit tighter than I wore the Ultrasonic and was playing around. And unfortunately, just with my knee pads, which are the Bauer Supreme knee pads, I actually found that the TuneFit strap wasn't quite long enough. So I made a quick mod and just tied a skate lace into the loop and gave myself about an extra 2 inches of strapping. And then I do this high up there and do that up that. So this effectively acts like an elastic Professor strap, but just for my desired strapping, needed to give myself a little extra play. And now let's compare it to the traditional TuneFit on the Vapor 2X. And then as you can see on the original TuneFit system on the 2X Pro, which is carried over to the 1X, the Velcro, instead of Velcroing it onto itself for adjustability, you could pull it in back like that. So very similar concept, to the two systems, but definitely like the TuneFit, the newer system better, just because it was actually a little bit more adjustability. Might sound a little odd, but I found the strapping to be too tight. Put a skate lace in, was very easy to mod it, versus you can see here, this red strap is actually from Ultrasonic. Found the 2X Pro a little bit too tight and had to borrow some old strapping off different pads. So Bauer used to ship them with different length straps, I think a medium and a long, and I really preferred when Bauer did that, but at the same point, pretty easy mod to do on the 2X Pro. Or excuse me, on the Hyperlite compared to the 2X Pro. In addition to the new StabiliFlex knee block, comparing that to the 2X Pro, one of the other key differences is that the Hyperlite is a softer core, so it's going to flex a bit more than the Hyperlite, or excuse me, in the 2X Pro. But if you look down there, that's not an optical illusion or anything with the way the pads are broken, and you see a lot more floor between the knee block here on the Hyperlite than you do between the 2X Pro and the calf wrap. And the reason being, this is a pad that has a bit more flex in it above the knee. So they actually changed the way this calf plate is shaped so that you have more relief there and the pad actually flexes, versus if you look, I can barely get my fingers between the gap there and I have lots of space to play there. So all of these things all go together, where really the biggest upgrade between the 2X Pro and the Hyperlite is really gonna be this whole area here between the StabiliFlex knee, the calf pillow, and the relief there. It's gonna give the pad a lot more flex in that area, and the seal is going to be a lot better as well. So may seem subtle in some ways if you haven't seen the Hyperlite up close, but Bauer really did a good job of taking the 2X Pro, which was definitely their most complete pad to date at that point in time, and really started to sort of refine the pad. You know, it slid fast, it had great rebounds, it was a decent flex profile compared to the Supreme, but they were able to improve the sliding, improve the flex, and really separate the Vapor line from the Supreme line, and also make the Hyperlite a significantly improved pad compared to the 2X Pro. And with every generation of Bauer pad, they are always getting more and more durable. And as we can see on the Hyperlite, this is the Core-Tech Plus versus the 2X Pro had the Core-Tech ST. So this was an upgrade versus like the 1S, 1X system. And then the Core-Tech Plus is an upgrade even over the Core-Tech ST. This means that it's going to be more durable, so that the pad's going to flex, and any of those issues that we saw in some of the earlier pads with cracking or durability is going to be out of the pad. And as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, lent these out to really give them the full wear and abuse. So I could talk more about Bauer's greatly improved durability, and the Hyperlite is going to be an even more durable skin than what was on the Vapor 2X Pro. All right, so I mentioned it in the last segment, but flex is also one of the improvements. Hyperlite is a more flexible pad than the 2X Pro. It's not so much torsionally more flexible. You're still gonna get that great seal you'd expect from Bauer, but it's more basically from the R and Vapor up to the top binding of the pad. It's more flexible. Bit hard to show in video, so bear with me. But if we flex this, you can see, get a really good flex there, and we go over to the 2X Pro. It's just a little bit stiffer pad. So for anybody that's ever looked at a Bauer pad in a store and said, man, I love that, but maybe I'm coming from a Vaughn and I think that Bauer's gonna be too stiff for me, Hyperlite is the pad for you, because it is just a little bit softer, and it's gonna really appeal to much different goalies than maybe who thought Vapor 2X Pro was too stiff. And check out my Instagram. I've had some pretty good videos showing this, but you know, you can really flex this goalie pad in a good way for people that want flex. And again, the 2X Pro, you can see the flex is there, but keep in mind, this pad has like, you know, hundreds of skates on it versus we have maybe 12 on the Hyperlite. So I want to put that in context. It's almost like the Hyperlite comes in maybe as much as the 2X Pro could have been worked into. So this is going to really be a great choice for a goalie that wants the Bauer tech, but is looking for a more flexible pad. All right, and last but not least, this is my favorite upgrade. In Bauer's older pads, they lace the toe bridge in back, and you can see I tried some glue to glue it up there. I felt like the attachment point for the toe wasn't quite rigid enough, and the glue was kind of a failed mod. Bauer came to answer my questions and actually sews the toe bridge on right on the back of the binding now, so you get a lot better, more secure response from the toe bridge. And they also put some plastic encapsulated there between that white stitching, versus on the 2X there's nothing, and this makes the toe bridge feel a lot more like a rigid traditional toe bridge, which is a subtle but great upgrade on the Hyperlite. Thanks for watching. This is the GoalNet signing out.